In the history of Hollywood, few stars have so captured the imagination of fans as R2-D2, the feisty astrodroid made famous in Star Wars. Yet his background, even after 25 years in the limelight, remains a mystery.
I think he said he worked in like catering or something.
He was a stunt unit, he was a stunt droid.
He trained with the June Taylor dancers years ago, and he was just, you know, he's a hoofer.
I'm not real sure that accent is like the real deal. You know, I mean, homeboy is probably like from Detroit or somewhere.
Born in the sleepy London suburb of Bollocks, R2-D2's greatest early influence was his father, a third-generation mounted policeman. But from an early age, R2 was destined to disappoint him.
Dad always expected us to follow in his footsteps, but we couldn't get Reg to get his leg over the steed, so at that point my father started treating him differently.
Unable to please a father he adored, R2 sought approval elsewhere.
He went off to acting school. You know, he always liked being the center of attention, so it sort of fit, didn't it?
In the freewheeling London of the 1960s, R2 discovered a freedom he never dreamed of back in Bollocks. For the first time in his life, R2 felt like he belonged.
He was doing Panto up in Bristol, and he was doing an amazing production in A Christmas Carol. He was Tiny Tim.
R2's creative talents went beyond acting. Along the way, he met a man who would become a lifelong friend.
We had an interest in music, and we were both drummers. I grew up at the time with the Beatles, playing in the clubs, and we often jammed together. Those were good times, and that was, I think music was his outlet.
I think he liked being in the spotlight.
Father was singularly unimpressed.
Tortured by his father's rejection, R2 poured himself into music.
He was partying with Ringo, having tea with Hendrix, and that was the summer of love. He headed west to the epicenter and ended up running with some really radical people in California.
I first met R2 many years ago. He was just a young, aspiring droid, you know, innocent and very sweet-natured. He doesn't even remember me now.
I'd heard that he was doing some experimental dance. You know, that was sort of in the 60s. I don't think anybody remembers anything about what happened in those years.
R2 quickly found work on American television, playing a variety of supporting roles.
You know, in like Starsky and Hutch, they was throwing those cans around, trash cans. That's how he got started.
He did a couple stints on That's My Mama.
True to Hollywood tradition, R2 had a series of tumultuous love affairs.
Well, I always liked short guys, and he was my ultimate short guy. He had that one great eye. I loved looking into that eye.
We actually tried to get him, R2-D2, in The Godfather.
If I remember correctly, he wanted him for the Michael Corleone role.
Since I've read the book, I mean, I could just see him in those scenes when he's walking through the Sicilian countryside with the two bodyguards with their shotguns. And so kind of that image always made me persist in trying to get him the part, but they didn't see it. Bob Evans called him a runt.
But The Godfather's second unit director, a young filmmaker named George Lucas, saw exactly what he needed for his new film, Star Wars.
In the very, very first script, R2 is described as a trash can on wheels. And that's one of the reasons why I saw him. I said, this guy's perfect. You know, I hope he speaks English.
March 1976. Filming begins in Tunisia. Though already a veteran of stage and television, R2's transition to feature films proves difficult.
It was a huge burden on R2 to really carry the very first scene in Star Wars. He had the second line of dialogue in the whole film.
Did you hear that? They shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure.
Under the intense spotlight of a major feature film, R2's nerves frayed.
Probably the biggest fear he had was he had to appear in a scene with Alec Guinness. And that was a huge opportunity for him. I know he was really nervous that day. He got sick the morning before that.
The pressure proved too much. R2 had to be treated for exhaustion.
Despite R2's strengths, he's insecure. There's some insecure programming somewhere in his system.
I think it's easy for people to forget that he has feelings. When you're at crotch height, it's hard to make a good impression.
Displaying the feisty courage which would become his trademark, R2 was back on the set the next day. He nailed the scene with Guinness in one take.
R2 is a brilliant actor. His timing is impeccable. He's like a machine.
I first met R2 in 1976. I had gone to visit George at his company, at his studio, and I was just drinking some water from a small styrofoam cup. And I went to throw my cup away, and I saw this trash can in the corner, and I walked over to it. The lid wouldn't come off. And this whole thing began to squeak and bleep and make all these noises. And I kicked it 3 or 4 times. It fell over. And then George said, "What are you doing to R2?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to throw my styrofoam cup away in this trash can." He said, "That's not a trash can, that's R2-D2.
It was a mistake no one would ever make again. The following year, R2 became a part of American culture.
Star Wars was a huge success. He came back, he was a star. The mayor gave him a key to the city. They named a bypass after him, the R2-D2. It was wonderful.
There was only one thing missing from R2's triumphant return home.
Dad was unimpressed, so he refused to acknowledge Reg's accomplishments.
R2's troubled relationship with his father would haunt him all his life. In upcoming installments, Hollywood glory leads to excess and a deadly combination of drugs.
You know, he's been...
alcohol.
There's been rumor that he likes to drink.
And women.
It's these girls, man, in these short dresses and these tight clothes, man. It's like something he hadn't been exposed to.
Next time on R2-D2, Beneath the Dome.